Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Board meeting of April 25th, 2019. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me. Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as Sunshine Law, that this meeting would take place in the municipal courtroom at April 25th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Scoville?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Hestag?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Deb?
Here.
Committeeman Lapani?
Here.
Vice Chair Julian?
Here.
Chair Sarachi?
Here. Okay, first up, we have consideration of meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes of March 7th, 2019. May I have a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Scoville?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Hestag?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes. Okay, we do not have any considerations or planning board business. I will open it up, business from the floor. If anyone has any comments on anything not on this evening's agenda, please come forward. Okay. We do not have any considerations of ordinances, so we will move right into applications. The MAC Development Group, otherwise known as Shelburne Place, file number 18-PB-12-MS. This is continued from our March 7th meeting with notice. There have been revised plans and stormwater management report since that meeting, last revised March 27th. So, Councilor.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to advise the board in accordance with the statute that Board Member Sam Weinstein has reviewed the video recording of March 7th, 2019 regarding the first hearing on this matter. It's in entirety and therefore is entitled to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is David Singer from the law firm of BELLE, Singer & Associates. I'm here tonight representing MAC Development as a continuation of the prior hearing on March 7th. At that time, we provided testimony from our traffic engineer as well as our planner and engineer with respect to the environmental impact statement and community impact statements. We'll rely on that testimony and the public comment and answer that went along with that testimony. We're here primarily to address some of the open issues that arose during the last hearing. We took the opportunity between last hearing and this hearing to actually accomplish most of what the engineer had requested in the prior memo. And so you'll see from the memo that has now been issued, there's very few things that are left open from his first memo. So we'll rely on the testimony from the prior hearing with regards to everything except for what we're going to address in Mr. Euro's current memo as well as Mr. Maskey's memo with regard to tree mitigation calculations. I would like to ask the board we're going to request a variance to the 20% tree mitigation requirement as well as a waiver for removal of trees beyond the critical footprint and an economic hardship waiver with regard to the tree mitigation deficit. I have with me again this evening Ms. Debbie D'Amico. Would the board like her to be sweared in again?
Does it continue?
under
or
oath
do
So
we-
this is a continuation of the hearing. She's been previously sworn.
Okay, so you're still under oath.
With that, I will begin with Ms. D'Amico. For the board, could you please explain, Ms. D'Amico, what you did between the prior meeting and this with regard to revisions to the plans?
So the revisions to the plans were pretty straightforward, addressing specific items that the engineer was looking for. Most of it had to do with drainage and finalizing some calculations. Some of it I touched on last time, projecting what I was going to do to fix some of the issues. The most notable would be on, and do these have to be marked into, these are the current plans.
Since they're
These are
revisions.
revised plans.
Yeah, these are the revised.
Yeah, the older plans were marked in evidence, but the revised plans have
No,
not.
They should be marked.
We can
in.
mark them then.
so, I don't know where we start. A8.
A8.
Okay. So A8 is sheet 1 of 11, the title sheet for major subdivision. A9 would be existing conditions and removal plan for the major subdivision, and all of these have a revision date of March 27th, 2019. A10 would be the lot layout plan with the same revision date, that's sheet 3. Where am I up to? A11 would be sheet 4, which is the grading plan with the same revision date. A12, too many numbers in my head to keep straight, is the utility plan with the same revision date, and that's sheet 5. Plan and profile, sheet 6, would be A13. Same revision date. A14 would be the landscape plan, sheet 7. A15 would be the soil erosion sediment control plan, which is sheet 8. Soil erosion sediment control details, sheet 9. And I've lost count where I was on exhibit A.
A16.
16 is sheet 10, which is the construction details of the same revision date. And then the final one is sheet 11 of 11, road cross-sections, same revision date. A7.
Actually, you skipped one. There.
Skip one?
Sheet 9 of 11 is A16. Sheet 10 of 11 would be A17, and the last one would be A18.
Okay, so looking at the utility plan,
Sheet number, please.
sheet number 5. Sheet number 5. If you look at where the road extension meets the existing Shelburne Place, where to go? Meets the existing Shelburne Place cul-de-sac bulb, I inserted 2 inlets and discharge pipe over to the detention, to the stormwater management basin. So, and that collects the runoff that was uncollected before, and brought that into the calculation. So that is the biggest issue for the drainage, and that addressed that issue. All the other things were time of concentration, providing calculations that weren't provided, changing the narrative in the stormwater management report. As you can see on the utility plan, adding the light locations, and so forth. So that's pretty much all of the bulk of the revisions.
So what we'll do now is go through Mr. Euro's report dated April 18th, just to go over the remaining comments. So on page 3 of his report, under general comments, we're going to go through the variances when we discuss the planning. The approval of the proposed street addresses has been addressed, as once we have approval, we can go to the township and get those. The homeowners association, as we previously testified, there will be a homeowners association, and we will provide all documents to the township for approval. The final plat, that will be done in the future once each of the, once the subdivision hopefully be approved, then we'll be able to look at site design, and the final plats will be provided at that point, addressing all of the comments on page 4. And
Just for the board's clarification, all the comments under section B, final plat, are more of a survey exercise, and the reason that they did hold off is in case the layout changed due to the drainage. Ms. D'Amico did provide me the necessary calculations. I am comfortable and I'm okay with what she has provided. There will be no changes to the proposed lot layout, so she can now proceed with providing that subdivision plat, which will pretty much mirror what's shown on these plans, but they'll have more of the requirements that the state needs for filing it with the county.
Okay.
thank you. So moving to stormwater management, C1 on page 5. As indicated, the comment has been partially addressed. I'll let Ms. D'Amico explain how she will address the second part.
We took into account on the low-impact development BMP list of part of the lot that will not be cleared as part of the subdivision, but we didn't show it on the dimension plan on sheet 3. So we will add that limit of clearing and limit of disturbance to sheet 3. And then
Number 2, we will prepare the deed restriction for review by the township board attorney as a condition of approval. Number 3 has to do with the operation and maintenance plan of the stormwater management area. I'll let Ms. D'Amico discuss that.
Yeah, now that we know that the design has been finalized and that it's, acceptable to all parties, I can draw up that, the operations and maintenance manual for the stormwater management, and then have it reviewed and address any concerns that might arise.
Thank you. And board, that is a technical document, and that must be submitted because that also goes towards the township's stormwater management plan that needs to be updated and reviewed every year. So that is important that we get that sooner than later.
Yep.
So we will provide that document. Number 4, the applicant will comply with comment C4. On page 6, part D, we discussed previously with regard to the Shelburne Place cul-de-sac being eliminated. That ultimately would be decided by the township committee, and we'll work with the township committee if they so deem to want to vacate that cul-de-sac. Number D2, we let Ms. D'Amico address the general comment for D2.
Yeah, there were a couple of places on the plans, when you do revisions to plans, it's sometimes hard to get each and every note. I left a couple of notes on from before, so I'd like to put on the record that The weir will be a 5.5-foot broad crest weir, where it says, there's 2 places on the plan where it says 6 foot, that'll be removed. And then there's a typo, the bottom of the basin is 113.8. So I will correct that as well.
In terms of additional agency approvals, I'll give some updates. There's really no update with regard to the county. They just, once the lots are built, they just want to make sure there's recycling. So that's really one of their primary objectives. Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, we had submitted the jurisdictional determination. We will comply with the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission's requirements for a major project, and we are working with them. The Somerset Union Soil Conservation District application was submitted. We received some comments, most of which somewhat mirrored the comments from the board. So we will be providing them with the revised plans as well, which will address their comments. From New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, we have the LOI, which has been provided to the board and the Environmental Commission. The Hillsborough Municipal Utility Authority, we are working closely with Scott Lynn from the Municipal Utility Authority on obtaining approval and from the MUA for both the sanitary sewer extension and the water extension. Hillsborough Township Fire Official, their one comment was to add the fire hydrant, which we will do. The Environmental Commission, we addressed in a revised stormwater management plan, as well as providing the LOI. The Hillsborough Township Board of Health, there were no comments or anything received back from the Board of Health. New Jersey American Water, we have already reached out to them with regard to water connections for the proposed properties. We've also reached out to the utilities regarding connections for the properties as well.
Before we move on, just to go back up real quick onto the detention basin, Mr. Yo, is it on number 2, it's no longer an infiltration basin, it's now going to be a detention basin, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that was re-engineered to satisfaction?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Why was that? Is the pipe is going into the detention basin, and the detention basin's infiltrating into the wetland? Is that the way? I know we've been through a few iterations.
Yeah, the stormwater, it's really a stormwater management because it takes 2 accounts. The water quality storm will still be an infiltration, so that will still infiltrate into the soil. And that gives us our recharge requirement and some water quality. And then the larger storms, the 2, the 10, the 2, the 10, the 100, will flow over just a broad crest weir. So it's not really a structure, it's just a weir, and that flows into the wetland area. So the wetlands are being fed from the smaller storms, the more regular storms through the soil, and then the larger storms will overflow like they do now, because it now sits there, it's a flat area, and that flows, that feeds the wetlands regularly. So again, I always try to mimic what's going on, existing to proposed, because that's the best design, and it has the least impact.
So you have it going a couple of different places. I mean, one's into
Right.
the soil, and the other's into the system itself, the storm system itself. Is that correct, or?
No, it's all collected and dumped into, the stormwater collection system dumps into the basin,
Okay,
and the basin, the smaller storms will go into the soil.
okay.
And it'll fill up, it's only 1.5 feet. And it'll fill up to a point where it will then overflow into the wetland below. So if you look at the detail sheet, sheet 10, sheet 10 I think it is. at the bottom right part of the sheet, there's a blow up of the stormwater management basin. So you see, there's the pipe that comes from where we picked up by the existing cul-de-sac.
Right.
This picks up the new part of the cul-de-sac. And it all dumps into a big, really flat stormwater management basin with a sand bottom. It still has a sand bottom. And that will infiltrate the smaller storms. The top of the sand, which is the bottom of the basin, is at elevation 113, let me just make sure I get it right, 113.8. And if you look at the top here, there's just a little 5.5-foot weir that overflows, and the elevation of that is 114.4. So it's only a few inches deep. Once it fills up for the water quality storm, it will overflow through that small opening, and it'll feed this wetland back here.
Which is at a lower elevation.
Which is at a lower elevation, yep.
How about the trees? I know we didn't talk about it yet, but the trees are being removed from that
Right,
area, or-
because it's an infiltration for the water quality storm, it's got the sand bottom, and it doesn't have any trees, so we're removing the trees from this area. And that is the biggest part of why we need relief from the tree removal on that. Should I go right into that since we're now talking about that?
Yeah, are there any,
Any more
Mr. Euro, do you have
questions?
any questions regarding?
I'm good, just for the record, as you get your responses back from your outside agencies, if something from one of those agencies causes you to change the detention basin, which may modify the lot configuration, you may have to come back before the board, just as a heads up.
Noted.
Quick question, the existing house that's staying, is that on public water and sewer as well?
I think it's on well, and it's public. To tell you the truth, it's been a while since I've looked at that.
The owner of that property that you're here. Well and septic.
And it's going to stay that way?
Yes.
Thank you.
Who's going to state that as testimony?
I'll say it.
Just say it.
That was, the existing home that's going to stay is on private well and septic system, and it will remain as such, and it's sized appropriately for that configuration.
Any other engineering questions?
No?
Nothing for me, thank you.
So is
Any-
this-
No, I was just going to pass it along to the board here, unless you,
No, we have to open the public.
no. I just want to make sure you guys don't have any additional.
No.
Okay, so we have a motion to open to public.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Or we can do all in favor, that's right. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? None? Good. I am opening up to public. If you have questions of this witness, please come to the microphone. State your name and address for the record.
Bill Cooper, 351 Woods Road, and I was wondering what was done. I know a lot of work was done about the water on the west side of the site. I'm on the east side of the site, and we do get stormwater flow, sometimes enough to wash the mulch around from the side of the house and floods the patio. I know my neighbor has a worse situation. So I was wondering what, if anything, was done to address stormwater flow eastward towards Woods Road.
Okay. So the stormwater management, the way we've done the lot configuration, there's a ridge that goes between, it's actually on our property. All of the development is on the other side of the ridge. So what comes your way will remain the same. Nothing's being done to mitigate that. However, because we're mitigating for the houses, and you shouldn't have any increase because that flows the opposite way. That goes towards the east. That make sense?
Well, we'll hope so, because, but I have no objection, it's just if there was anything that could be done to slow it down, or at least not cause any increase, it would be good, because we're concerned all that new impervious surface, it's got to be addressed, and I hope it was. The other thing I was wondering, I've been trying to hook up with American Water, and if Mr. Singer could get me in connection with them. They're very difficult people to deal with. I would appreciate that. I'm not the first one. Yeah.
And I just wanted to tell you that the lot that faces that way is going to have a dry well, so it'll collect the water from that house and put it into.
Well, the other thing, are they all going to have municipal water and sewers?
Well, the new homes will be municipal water and sewer.
So if I could get some information on how to get in touch with American Water, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for our engineer. Bob, are you satisfied with the eastward flow that was just brought up? That'll be taken care of?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Come on, Susan, your hand's halfway up. Let's go.
I wasn't going to ask questions.
I don't, liar. Just wouldn't be the same.
It's Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. I have a couple questions. You started out the tree removal revisions. Can that be pulled down so I can kind of look at the, no, the other direction? Yeah, the overview. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I'm headed to the tree plan so that you can see.
No, I just, yeah. Okay. I couldn't understand from the back, the revision that you're making is only the trees being removed from where you're going to have what you're calling the Stormwater Management Basin, or there's other changes being made for removal? You're not clear cutting anything?
We're removing trees from the area of the homes. So you can see our limit of disturbance is around here. And so we're removing trees, but we're putting trees back where there's clearings. And we're putting trees back along the edge of our clearing limit. So where we've taken trees out and along the edge, at the end of our limit of disturbance, we are replanting trees. So while we can't replant every tree, there's trees there'll be street trees in the road. There's 40, wait a minute, let me just scroll down. There's
43.
three trees, and we're planting an additional 77 trees on site.
Okay. At the last meeting, there was a resident of, I think it's Grafton.
Over here.
Yeah. Who was concerned about the one corner of that lot where you said you were leaving woods, although there would not be a conservation easement. Is that still being left by you at this point?
Yes, that is being left wooded. So you can see all these little dash trees up here, those are to remain. And all of these little dots in here are to remain. And we're planting a couple of trees in there to supplement as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is going to be a private road with a homeowners association, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So the plowing would only take place up to where the public plowing would only take place up to where the current cul-de-sac is located, correct?
We believe.
Yep.
Yes, okay. So the plows would still need, it would be a decision of the township committee whether the plow, they would need it to remain for certain reasons, like snow plows.
Right, they're going to have to figure out how that'll,
Okay,
the
how to do
logistics of that.
Okay. The 5.5-foot weir is going to be taking additional water from the old Shelbourne into the new, how big is that one lot where the retention basin is, stormwater management? It just looks huge compared to the rest of the development.
So that is 1.388 acres.
Oh, okay.
And the rest of them are approximately one. There's one lot that's 1.5 acres, and that's the big triangular lot here. That's this one, that one's big, that's the biggest one.
Okay, I was trying to understand it relative to the lots because it looked big from the back. So more water, would more water be going into the wetlands behind the houses on Grafton, or because of your redesign, that's being handled?
It's all being managed and detained, infiltrated, detained, and then released. And so the increase in flow is actually a reduction in flow, in peak flow. But the quantity will be more, but it'll be drawn out over a longer period of time so that the peak flow is less.
Okay, so more would
Which
be
is
coming in, but it would be perking over a
Right.
longer period of time. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Got it?
Okay, anyone else would like to question this witness? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you. The witness is
Yeah.
going to remain to talk about the next part, which is the tree mitigation. At the last meeting, Mr. Maskey raised some concern about the calculations that were done for the tree mitigation. Those calculations have been were redone and submitted to Mr. Maskey. Currently we would need a variance. Right now the requirement is no more than 20% of trees to be removed. Based on our calculations, we'd be removing 31% of the trees. As previously testified this evening, part of that is because we do have to remove all the trees out of the detention, the stormwater management area. So we would ask for a variance from the board on that, as well as we, under the plans, we had to remove some of the trees beyond the critical footprint. Before we go into the economic hardship waiver, I'll let Ms. D'Amico discuss the calculations and what was done to minimize the amount of trees that we needed to remove from the site.
Okay, so I'm looking at sheet 7, the bottom middle of the sheet, and that's where all the calculations are done. And so you see for under mitigation, the number of replacement trees shall be in accordance with the ordinance. And so for every tree that is 6 to 12 inches, we have to, the ordinance requires 2 trees be replanted. 13 to 24 inches would be 4 trees, and then any tree in excess of 25 inches, 6 trees would be required to be replanted according to ordinance. The reason tree ordinances such as this are put in, the purpose of them is several reasons. One is to obviously protect shelter for fauna in the area. We have tried to concentrate our development to a portion of the site and then leave a large swath of trees and woodland for the fauna that would be out there, which would be small animals, squirrels, chipmunks, maybe skunks, raccoons, possibly a deer. The site is predominantly treed with cedar trees, which don't provide, they provide a lot of greenery and a lot of home for the really small animals, but they don't provide any variety for them. So we've replanted, the trees that we're replanting with deciduous trees to protect against disease and to also allow some variety and some change in canopy. Another reason why it's difficult for us to not remove more trees is because it is predominantly cedars. Cedars grow close together in clumps, and so when you remove even a small area, you're removing a lot of trees. So that's another reason why there's so many trees, it seems like, being removed, but as you know, there's a lot that we're not removing. We tried to avoid the larger trees. Where I could see a tree and I could avoid it with grading, I really tried to pull my grading in so that I could leave larger trees. And as we go in construction, if there's a large tree that can be salvaged, we will save it. We're only removing 2 trees of the largest of over 25 inches. So that's, you can tell I really worked hard to do that. Another reason for a tree ordinance is to protect from clear cutting the site, and we're clearly not doing that. We're leaving a great amount of the site wooded, and then we're repopulating the woodland with appropriate species. And then another purpose of the ordinance is to encourage the use of portions of sites that are already disturbed or have no trees. That doesn't exist on this site. So again, that's a hardship that's unique to this site, that it's completely wooded. So there was no place we could go to turn to have a lesser impact on tree removal. And so it's for those reasons we're asking for the variance of the 20% and allowing 31%, because it's by number, on the tree removal.
And the trees you're leaving and the trees we're planting to replace, will there be sufficient canopy?
Oh, there'll be plenty of canopy for the remaining fauna in the area, especially once we supplement with, we're removing all of those trees, but we're putting back another, just want to make sure, 77 trees back besides, that's in addition to the street trees that we're planting. So it's a substantial amount of planting to be done.
With regard to removal of the trees beyond the critical footprint, could you explain to the board why that's necessary and why we need a waiver?
When I went to raise the stormwater management basin so that the bottom of the basin was above the adjacent wetland, that in turn raised the road, and so there was a little bit more grading between the road and the houses, and so those areas are technically outside the critical footprint. They're beyond 40 feet beyond the house, they're beyond the right-of-way. So those are areas that are beyond the critical footprint, but in order to get the whole site to work, you have to disturb them.
Lastly, I'm going to discuss the economic hardship waiver request. We provided a letter from the developer sort of explaining why the request is necessary. There are a total of 1,252 trees required. We're putting 77 back onto the property, leaving a deficit of 1,175 trees. That's a large number of trees. And you multiply that times $325 per tree, you get somewhere in the ballpark of $382,000. The project is estimated, the total site improvement cost is estimated at $2.95 million. With the added tree mitigation, the tree mitigation itself would be roughly over 11% of the total cost for site improvement. The ordinance allows a waiver, an economic hardship waiver, when that cost is above 1.5%, which in this case it is. So we would then therefore ask for the economic hardship waiver, which would be a replacement of 136 trees, 77 of which we proposed on site, and 60 trees the applicant would either work with the Parks Department, and we could have that discussion, and or make a donation of equivalent cash value to the Township Tree Fund.
well, the case was laid out, the only, not the only, but one decision is whether or not they can do a cash contribution, or, and Mr. Wagner is here tonight, head of the Parks Department, if it would be more opportune for the township to take the trees as a contribution to the Parks Department, or to have the cash put into the tree fund. I don't know, Bob, if you want to address
Yeah,
that.
David and I discussed it, and I discussed it with my park supervisor, John, this morning in reference to that. The preference would be to have the donation to the tree mitigation fund in lieu of the actual trees.
That's fine if that's the preference of the board.
Thank you.
David, was the estimate provided with some backup, or was it just they're providing a number as far as an estimate?
I don't know which David you're asking.
Well, either one. Whoever has the answer.
So this developer, MAC Development, developed the subdivision on Shelburne Place, just above where we're proposing this development, which was a 5-home development. So essentially, this is going to be a very similar development with similar size houses and a very similar cost structure. So we were able to take the cost that we know from the prior development and estimate what the cost for site improvements would be on this property.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion from the dais?
I have a question here. Well, listening to everything, it seems like utmost care has been taken to either not disturb, looking at fauna, the floral patches, as well as, wherever we are forced to, it seems like we will be putting in sufficient, trees of other varieties, etc. Now, one question that I have is, with the new plan, right, vis-a-vis the older tree coverage, what % we think are we actually going to cover? When we say there is going to be sufficient coverage, right, do we have any estimates? And here's where I'm coming from about the question. I understand there are different sizes of trees, right, and only 2 big ones have been disturbed. However, if I look at 77 plus even 60, right, that's what, 11% of the outstanding 1,175 trees to be planted? Now, understood, those could be of various sizes, but the delta seems pretty huge. So,
We're not taking away 1,200 trees. The mitigation requirements sometimes require more than one tree to replace. Right. So it's not that 1,200 trees are going to be disappearing.
no, I understand that. However, if a calculation of similar thing has been made, right, obviously there has been some thought behind it as to why 2 planting for 1 or whatever.
Right.
Right? Keeping that into consideration, like, all that I'm trying to understand is how barren is the place going to look? I understand we have assurances it is not.
Right, okay, so how barren the place will look, if you look at sheet 7, which is the planting plan, you can see that, like, there's a clearing here, that there's no trees there's no canopy there.
Right. If I may
So
make it easier for you, Mr. Miko, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
don't mean
sure.
to speak over
Yeah,
you.
no, that's
I
okay.
apologize. My question only is, the new coverage, is it going to be 60% of the previous one, 50% of the previous one, 70%? What do we think?
Oh.
If we have an estimate.
Well, some of that will be roadway, some of it will be homes.
Right.
And certainly you will have some lawn. And then, of course, the detention basin is going to be, or the stormwater management basin, will be barren. So that part will be empty. We're putting trees around the edge of it, but we're putting, so it's kind of hard to say that. So in places, it'll look barren, like the basin, and certainly the road and around the houses. But the part that the edge of our disturbance, we're replanting it to the same, we expect the canopy to be the same. Now, deciduous trees have more of a canopy, so they have to be planted a little further apart. But it's a good decision to add variety to the trees. So the canopy will be similar in the places that there are no homes, no lawns, no. So from an aerial point of view,
Yep,
it will look the same at the places where it's undisturbed.
so the same, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Okay, I'm going to invite the public. If anyone would like to cross-examine a witness or ask any questions. Okay. Looks like you're finished.
We're finished. Are there any more questions of the board?
I just have a couple of clarifications, if I may. One is the affordable housing obligation. We spoke about this, I believe, at the last hearing. There's basically three choices. Construct one unit on site, an affordable unit, construct one unit off-site, or pay an affordable housing fee of 1% of the equalized assessed value of each new home. Have you decided which route to take?
Yeah, the 1%.
Okay.
Sorry, the cash.
The cash, okay. And just again, on the vacation of the existing Shelburne cul-de-sac, you would agree to at least petition the Township Committee to vacate?
Yes.
And then you would take responsibility for any improvements that have to be done in connection with vacating the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
All right. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Nothing further.
okay. Counselor?
If I may then,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board at this point would be able to consider a resolution to approve application number 18-PB-12MS, the application of, MACC Development Group, Inc., otherwise known as Shelburne Place, subject to the conditions which have been agreed to as memorialized in the minutes before you from the meeting of March 7th. And in addition, based upon the testimony presented by Ms. D'Amico on the representations of council, tonight's meeting, April 25th, those conditions, including the redesign of the detention basin to have an infiltration as well as drainage, and also the tree mitigation plan as shown on revised sheet 7 and as detailed with the hardship variance in the letter of March 25, 2019, which was submitted and reviewed by Mr. Maskey and myself.
Thank you.
And you could consider that resolution.
Okay. So I'll open up, see if anyone would like to move the said stated resolution
I'll
for
move
approval.
that.
I'll
I'll
second it.
make them,
Okay, so we got Ron has approved, or made the motion, and Neil just seconded it.
thank you.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes,
Mr. Wagner?
Yes?
Mr. Hashtag?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Mr. Deb?
Yes.
Rita Vindapani?
yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Mr. Rob?
Yes.
Thank you, members of the board.
Yeah, thank you. Best of luck.
Next meeting.
Yes,
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if may, the next meeting is May 2nd, next week.
All right.
We're simply meeting weekly these days. That will be a continuation of the LD construction application. That's the 206 project. We'll also be having consideration of an ordinance that was introduced by the Township Committee last week, amending the Gateway A district.
Okay, and I just asked members of the board if you're unable to attend, to please let Mr. Maskey know as soon as possible. I'm unable to attend, Mr. Maskey.
I'll be there.
Which I think I've already made that clear, so. Neil, I hope you're ready.
I'm
You'll be
unable
here?
to attend.
Calling the right-hander?
That's
Heads up. Yeah, I will be here.
Okay, and does anyone need to review any meeting tapes from from the first?
Was anybody not here at the April 4th meeting on the LD construction? Everybody was here?
I was not, but I'll review the.
I thought just Neil.
I wasn't here.
Okay, so you'll review the video?
I think I was here.
My Mets jersey, right?
I was here for so many of the
I was.
Yeah, I was there for the 4th.
How many was there?
Yeah, I was not here. It was opening day.
Okay.
All right, just to help, the LD is the one that's on 206,
That's
next
206, next to the
to,
Bottle King.
next to Bottle King.
Was I telling people?
Yes, so if you would please review the video so we can have you vote next time. Thank you.
All right, cool. So if that's it, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Everybody jumps on that one.
All right, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. See you next week. Good night.